We're back here on our special program as we talk about the World Trade Organization and where the Bahamas is and whether or not we ought to accede to the rules of WTO. And Paul Moss, Zhivargo, Laing, they are the people who have been studying this. And gentlemen, what do you say? Obviously, Mr. Moss, you believe that there ought to be a referendum on it. Referenda in the Bahamas, they don't succeed.
Well, it doesn't
Maybe that's why he played the horse.
it doesn't succeed for the government.
They don't succeed at all.
Well, let me just say on that, right? It has always been, when it comes to referenda in this country, that it is a question that is posed by the government.
Yeah.
It has never been one that's come from the people. If
the government represents the people.
No, yes, they may represent the people, but they represent their own special interests. That's why they've been defeated on every aspect that they're brought to us. But if the people say, for example, that we want this thing, they'll be obliged to vote for it.
So what you're saying is you have a horse in the race.
Yeah, but I mean a referendum, the assumption that the referendum comes from the people assumes that every person is against or for a thing, and that's never true. The question is put.
Say that again.
I'm saying you said if it comes from the people,
right?
But that is to suggest that there aren't Bahamians who are saying I don't want a referendum, and I'm part of the people. So how does it become from the people?
Well, here's what I'm saying. I'm saying I was speaking generally about a referendum,
right.
But I'm saying specifically now about free trade, and in this instance specifically the World Trade Organization.
Right.
That is so fundamentally flawed for the Bahamas' economy today that it should not be for the government, who comprise those people who sit in Parliament, to make a determination that would affect his livelihood and the livelihoods of thousands of Bahamians who have a space in this economy.
Even if you decided to have a WTO, I think that it would be like putting a referendum, it would be like putting the cart before the horse, because today, you adopt a position, somebody's adopted a position, we just shouldn't join the WTO. Why? Why? What?
The same reason why they adopted a position that they should join it.
No, but
why?
No. Well, there have been reasons why.
And there are reasons why we should not.
No, but my point is that the government has adopted a position that it is seeking membership, and a part of that seeking is a negotiation. So it hasn't decided that no matter what it's going to join, it's negotiating a position. And it may come to the determination that based on the degree of the negotiations, it does not want to join. But I'm saying before you even get there, someone has decided, don't do it.
Mr. Laing, Mr. Moss, there are some wholesalers and retailers in the Bahamas who will tell you straight up that they don't want to be, that the Bahamas should not be involved in it.
And some who say the opposite.
Because it would threaten the livelihood of their business.
And some will say the opposite. I was on a panel at the Chamber of Commerce, and on that panel, during the course of that panel, we had a dialogue pretty much like this. And at the end of it, there may have been about 100 people in the room, the Rupert Roberts of the world and so forth. And they were asked, based on what you have heard, how many of you would support joining the WTO? God is my witness. I sat there and thought, we get like 1 or 2 hands raised in this place. And when we were done, if not more than half, 50% of the people in that room raised their hands. I was stunned
to be a part of it.
Let me ask you, who was the opposing view to what you were projecting?
Ryan Pinder was arguing a contrary view to
that's surprising because he held your
position. It was surprising. He did, but he did. He said that he used to believe that we should do so, but he no longer believes that, et cetera, et cetera. And
he's a convert now.
And he's whatever the conversion is. He certainly did oppose it on that day. We had Rupert Pinder, who was an economist, but he was arguing both sides. As even I told what were the pros and the cons, what were the challenges and the benefits on that occasion. And so in the room, following upon that meeting, the question was asked, and 50% of people in the room raised their hand.
Let me pose this question to you, Mr. Laing.
But where are you on it?
For me?
Yes.
I am not too keen on joining the WTO at this time, because I think the WTO is in reform. But
is in reform.
yes, and then the powers that be want to reform the WTO. But this is my question to Mr. Laing. All the countries in this region, Jamaica being the largest all the way through, have complained about the requirements for infrastructure to meet the WTO requirements, particularly the Agreement on Agriculture, phytosanitary, and those kinds of measures. The expertise, the manpower needed to effectively administer and protect your sectors in the WTO based on the rules and regulations. How are we on those two issues?
First of all, let me say, I was at the WTO, met with the ambassadors of all of those countries in the region. They were in attendance at receptions that we were having. They were encouraging us, they were applauding us. They stood up inside the meeting, encouraging that the Bahamas was joining and so forth and so forth. So whatever their anxieties, they weren't expressing it there.
But that's reasonable solidarity. See, the practical parts of it is.
No, but gentlemen, listen, I do not want to make any suggestions that the WTO or any global governance organization or any national institution in this country is without issues, is without need for reforms. But we don't throw them away. We think they have their good, they have their challenges, and so forth and so forth. On the phytosanitary issues, etc., one of the things people forget in this country is that we, when I was minister responsible, negotiated an economic partnership agreement. It is an agreement with all of the European Union, all of CARIFORUM, and all of the ACP countries. It was a WTO plus agreement, meaning it had to comply with the WTO and had some demands greater than that, right? Because of that, we have already instituted any number of things which are today WTO compliant things, including having institutions in place now today that deal with the phytosanitary issues that you are talking about.
Yeah, but they're at the very, very embryonic stages.
They are, Dr. Aeneas, but here's what is true. They are, but here's what is true. Let me make this point. No, you asked me the question. So let me finish this point. Let me finish this point.
No, let me make this point.
You said they are in their embryonic stages.
Yes, they are.
Listen to me, sir. Just 1 minute, right?
Yeah.
The government of the Bahamas, if it is successful, will not have completed these negotiations until the end of next year. It will not have gotten ratification of that decision by the World Trade Organization before June of 2020. If it gets that ratification by the trade ministers, it will have to come back to its own country and get that parliamentary ratification. And after that, we would have negotiated a period of adjustments that is as short as 5 years and as long as 10 in a 17-year process.
But it doesn't matter.
So what you're saying is that, right? We have an embryonic Bureau of Standards. Embryonic Bureau of Standards, right? We've been getting poultry from Brazil, where you had factories in Brazil, slaughtering facilities in Brazil, right, which have been condemned in terms of food safety standards, right? We don't have any facility in the Bahamas to verify that. We have to rely on the opinions of other people.
You didn't before.
But do we have the infrastructure?
You do.
No.
You do. The Bahamas, the University of the Bahamas, well, besides the government institutions, and the government has labs now today that can do that. I am not guessing on that, but the University of the Bahamas will launch its Small Island Sustainability Center next week. Yeah. It has 3 to 4 labs. These labs have the capacity to tell you what the aerosol level is in your air. So being able to test food safety, some food safety issues in respect of imports, etc., is also something it can do. So I'm saying to you, it may well have been.
If that's the case, I'm happy.
No, that's a fact. That's a fact. That's a fact.
Well, I know that there are packages coming into this country that has for export only.
For export only, yeah.
And I'm concerned, right, that why is that necessary if you're having the same thing that is produced in the United States?
Because one of the great misunderstandings about for export only is to think that it was a quality issue. What happens is countries subsidize their businesses with respect to certain exports. And they are saying that you cannot have me subsidize your product and then you go and domestically sell that product in my market competing with those I didn't. So the export only is really about the subsidized exports of countries.
That may be your point of view.
No, that's not my point of view.
I can tell you
let me
from
tell
my
you
own
what,
experience. From my own experience, from my own experience, I remember having a conversation with a client who was deeply involved in Frito-Lay. Frito-Lay, for the products that come to the Bahamas, are manufactured in Mexico. They're not manufactured in the United States as the Frito-Lay that you can buy from Walmart and other places. Manufactured in Mexico. Why is that? Those products could not go into the United States and be sold because they lack the requirements that the United States, through their labs, would say, hey, this is inferior, we can't take it. But we take it into the Bahamas wholesale, and we take it in, notwithstanding the groupings that you just spoke about that we have.
No, you may be right about something coming from a third country, okay? But if you have a for export only coming out of the United States, for export only coming out of Europe, it is largely a export-oriented something. And so the reason why I know that was because as a talk show host, this question was put to me. I couldn't answer it properly, so I didn't want to answer it properly. So I consulted with the people in the United States of America, the FDA, and the consumer organizations there as to the meaning of things. And it's also something you can research online too. And it largely is a subsidy issue that these for export only. That does not say that we don't have challenges with food safety matters coming out of countries, whether it's the United States or otherwise. So what the government is now doing is what they call a gap analysis of the extent to which our processes current meet with international best practices in terms of examining food safety. On completion of that gap analysis, it will then be able to know where it has to move in relation to examining, testing food issues coming into these countries. Because for instance, the Pan American Health Organization has already said that products coming into the Bahamas has sometimes 3 or so times the saline content as you might get going into.
Let me ask you, what are we trading? You joined the World Trade Organization. Right now, what is the benefit to our economy? What is the benefit to the Treasury of the Bahamas for the Bahamas to join the World Trade Organization? What are we trading right now?
That's always an interesting question for me to hear Bahamians ask, because trade itself is buying and selling, buying goods, buying services. So to ask a question is to ask, do we buy goods and services?
No, not necessarily.
No, that's what it is. And so, that's exactly what it is. And so also, hold on, I'm going to answer your question. The question as to what we trade as in internationally is we export about $400 million worth of products from the Bahamas today. And we import about $3 billion worth of products into the Bahamas today. We always think about what we are selling to people and what that means. But you know, if you are buying $3 billion worth of products from somebody and they change the price on you, they increase the price on you, they have just reduced your purchasing power and affected your economic status. So it is untrue to simply think of trade in terms of what you sell to people as opposed to what you buy from people.
How would the membership in the World Trade Organization impact that we are importing into the country?
Well, in a number of ways, because essentially you join the World Trade Organization and it says, we do not want barriers to trade on imports and exports. Barriers to trade increases the price and cost of a thing. And so the extent to which the government of the Bahamas has said, I'm going to join the WTO and subject myself to the rules of the WTO, says, I'm going to now have to lower the average tariff rate on goods. Well, once that's done, the reverse is happening to what I just said. The cost of these items for you are going down. You save in terms of your expenditure on those goods and services. The consumers in the country get the benefit of the lower cost of that. Businesses who have to pay upfront capital when they bring in items will get the benefit of not having to pay as much upfront capital, and they can use that capital for other reasons, for other things.
Mr. Laing, you mentioned that we import about $3 billion.
Yeah.
$1 billion of that is food.
About.
1 billion
Not quite, but about.
All right. We could be saving tremendous foreign exchange if the agricultural sector was more efficient, which it is not. Okay.
Yeah.
You said that we export 400 million in right?
Products, yeah.
100 million of that is lobster,
Okay.
right? Where's the other 300 million? It can't be in salt.
No, it's in a number of things. See,
It can't be with those refineries in Grand Bahama.
But that's what. But they consist and comprise of those things, and you don't get to willy-nilly decide how you define your export.
The point Jones and I are making, right? Our economy is essentially a service economy.
Yes, and this is one.
Right?
And this
But
is
let me
one.
finish now.
Residual, right?
No, but no, it's not residual. This is one of the mistakes we make also. If we sell a lobster to the United States, what do we get in return?
We get direct payment.
Yeah, we get a U.S.
Raw
dollar.
material.
We get a U.S. dollar.
Yeah.
When you sell a hotel room to the United States, what do you get?
We get US dollars
Well,
too.
that's your major export is services.
Yeah, but
It's the same impact on the economy as selling a product.
No, sir.
It
No, sir.
is exact same.
No, because a big percentage of what you get for your hotel room is food,
no,
which we don't produce. That's going out.
But Dr. Enias, with the greatest respect, if the lobster man has to buy his stuff the same way the tourist man has to buy his stuff from away, because we don't produce most of it. It's the same thing.
No, but
Economically, it's the same thing.
we're producing a raw material which he can't produce in this country.
No, but
So you're talking about trade and services as well.
yes, exactly. That's the point. And that's why the WTO has trade in goods and trade in services.
Right. Now,
Services by humans.
Yeah, I mean, even goods are delivered by humans.
Yeah, but services mostly are done by humans.
Yeah, the only difference between the goods and the services is that one is a tangible object you can actually take away from you when you buy it in the store. The other one is used at the time of purchase. That's the defining difference of a service. That I get a haircut, I can't walk away with the service itself. I get the service and I walk away.
what is, in terms of services, how are you negotiating the services aspect
Right.
of the Bahamas' participation in WTO?
That's a good question. Literally, if you look at the entire services sector as a pie, 72% of that pie is not even a matter of negotiation because it already operates within the strictures of the WTO. Financial services, tourism, there's all areas where you are already allowing international capital to flow into those areas without any limitations. So largely, the negotiation in services is about 15 areas that we have typically reserved for Bahamians. Wholesale and retail trade, construction except for specialty construction, restaurants except for specialty restaurants and ethnic restaurants, real estate, media services and the like. 15 areas. So if you can go to the National Investment Policy and see the listing. They represent about 28% of the economy, 28%, not 72%, but 28%. What we are negotiating is whether joining the WTO with the restrictions we have on foreign participation in those will be allowed by the membership of the WTO. So our approach to it is this. We go to those sectors. You go to the wholesalers, the retailers, you go to the construction and say, listen, guys, it's unlikely that these people might say, okay, don't change anything. So let's look at the four modes of trade: cross-border, commercial presence, yeah, that's the cross-border and the like.
Yeah.
Tell me what you can live with if we had to negotiate something. There's no Zhivargo goes to the Geneva with a view. You sit with the industry and you say, give me your red line. And that's what we're doing. And so when we go there, we would have gone with an agreed position by the industry as to what can be lived with. For manufacturers, as an example, we say, okay, even if we had to lower the duties on your items, that would change, and they lowered the cost of that imported item. That would change the differential that you charge, because you're already still higher than them. So that widens it. We can do WTO compliant subsidy things that helps you to reduce your price and maintain that differential, while at the same time not impacting your bottom line. And so those are the discussions we are having with them to be able to negotiate.
You talk about manufacturing-led industry. Brendan and I were discussing this week a catalog which was produced by BAIC in 2006. Remember?
Yeah. A lot of these people are out of business.
Out of business.
We have no real light manufacturing sector.
Not
vibrant
not
at all.
Not substantial,
Not vibrant at
no.
all.
But if you ask the water producers, if you ask the bleach producers, if you ask some of the local native charms and stuff like that, it's real for them. It's substantial for them. They do what they do for them. And
Yeah, but that's a small little market.
No, but however small they are, the job we have is seeking to negotiate terms of agreement that protects and preserves for them what they have.
See,
we're not the opposite.
Yeah, the leaders of this country in times past recognized that those areas, those small areas, were necessary for protection. Why? Because they recognized that if it was not protected, it means then that capital will come in and compete with them and mash them right up.
But you know that the manufacturing sector of the economy of the Bahamas is not reserved for Bahamians.
Well, I'm talking about the
Wholesale and retail trade.
And the water, the newspaper,
the
ground transportation. I'm talking about the full gamut of things that have been reserved for Bahamians.
No, the water people are not reserved for Bahamians. Water is a manufacture.
And water is a natural resource.
No, but still, it's a manufacture. It's not reserved for Bahamians. No foreigners come into the space, but there's nothing prohibiting an application from a foreigner in that space. Manufacturing is not reserved for Bahamians. And the areas what we have reserved for Bahamians, we've already breached the policy. I mean, so it makes the argument even more difficult at the WTO, because they get to say, well, your largest wholesaler is Cisco. Yes. They get to say you go to on Bay Street, and the vast majority of the owners of the stores on Bay Street are Mexicans and Indians.
Yes, that's because our leaders are a bit sloppy.
No question about that.
They've been sloppy. And so I'm saying
sloppy
to you, by
using
Cisco as an example, it stands to reason that Cisco is a company that made $150 billion last year. 150 billion. I don't know how much times it's more than our economy, but they're in the Bahamas. I dare say that no wholesaler or retailer could compete with that.
But they do today.
And I also say
BWA is their competitor.
Yeah, I'm saying that Cisco type coming in, competing with two Ciscos, it'll be very difficult.
Yeah.
And also, it is a space that, and I've heard you say it, and I've heard Brent Simmons say it, that Walmart will not come. If as though you sit on the board of Walmart and know what their projections may be. But the point I'm making is that businesses doesn't think the way you believe they think. They go after a market. And if a market exists in the Bahamas, a $1 billion market, they say, you know what? Imagine if we have access to them full time, as opposed to what they do today, going on to Florida and shopping.
But you know, I would tell you this much. No, we don't sit on the board of Walmart, but you sit on the board of the government of the Bahamas. And the reason the reason why Cisco is here is because there was a Bahamian fronting for a foreign concern for decades in the Bahamas, and someone decided to bring it to the front of the space.
But the government did that.
No, that's what I'm saying. The government decided to do it, right? But the truth of the matter is that when you look at these large companies and the decisions that they make to come into our market, you're right. They look for economic opportunities. But here's what is true. In the wholesale and retail space today, you have essentially a couple of families that have perpetual exclusive distributive agreements with some of the most powerful brands in the world that you and I will never touch. But let's just say you opened up the wholesale and retail space. Let's just say now a Johnny Carey could go and negotiate with another player and say, listen, you have a brand that's up and coming. I'd like to joint venture with you so that we can together to operate in that space. But we can't do that today.
Of course you can do it. You just gave the example of Cisco being in the country.
No, but I'm saying Cisco came in. Since Cisco came in, there has not been a foreign participant approved to do wholesale in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Not one single one.
That's because of the personality in government. Okay. But the personality in government approved Cisco. So that means that it could happen again.
We take our final short break here on our program, and we'll come right back.